told me I could get 40 people on here, and
All right, well, let's call our meeting to order. And let's see, the meeting of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District held on May 27th at 1:30. Pursuant to Executive Order N 2920, this meeting will be held exclusively via live web streaming. And how do we get this address out? Do we know? For the public?
Yeah, it's on our website and on the agenda. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Participants may also attend the meeting by telephone with the teleconference number. Text message public comment can be made to the following number and will be read aloud during public comment sections of each agenda topic. 530-205-8603. And I think that's it. Let's call on board members alphabetically, if you're good with that, Kevin.
Alphabetically, okay.
It's on the top right of the agenda.
Yeah,
it's easy.
So, yeah, Director Vice President Hetherington.
here.
Director Morrison.
Here.
President Odette.
Here.
Director Stevens. And Director Stevens.
Here.
Here. And Director Wallace. And Director Wallace.
Here.
Great. Do we have any special orders of business?
We don't have any from staff.
Anyone else?
No.
Okay. I think board president reserves the right to modify the agenda. I don't have any modifications. Anybody else? No.
No.
Any public comment?
No public comment so far.
Okay, let's jump right in. Item number 1. Kevin.
Yeah. So welcome and review of the agenda. So this is awesome to have a workshop. We wish in person. I will just put this out there that I just off of another Zoom call. This is my third Zoom call of the day, but with the area managers, and it does sound like multiple districts in June are going to start having in-person meetings, and so we may be to that point where we can get ourselves together in the boardroom, socially distant from a staff. We're looking at a few options on how to do that. As part of the workshop, we get to a situation where some of these items are difficult to talk about is Zoom, and we want to do it we may be able to defer board meeting if that's the will of the group, if we can meet in person. So I'll keep you posted on we may be moving that direction for the next board meeting. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Perfect. All right. The next one was the COVID-19 impacts community support forward. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the things that we're doing. I'm going to steal a little bit of thunder on finance.
Can I interrupt you, Kevin, real quick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So for you guys looking at your screen, if you see the little yellow box come around your name, it means that you're talking or you're making noise. So for those of you that don't have it on mute, if you see the little yellow box come on your name, you're making some noise, and it makes it hard for everyone else to hear. If you don't see the yellow box and you leave it off of mute, then you're doing an awesome job of being quiet. And if you can't be quiet, then just put on mute.
It could be a green box if you're using an iPad. Greener, yeah. So thank you. That's a really good point. Just shuffling papers, everyone can hear. So just real quick, we're the airport's kind of in an interesting position. We're just kind of moving forward, and I think it's pertinent as we start talking about some of these topics to know kind of financially where we sit. When we do the audit a little bit later, we'll get into a little more detail. But just looking at the COVID impacts of the districts so far, I would have to say it's pretty light. That we're not seeing significant drops in some of the revenue that we thought we might. The biggest ones are like rental car concession revenue. I think it was $200 in April, where it should have been $15,000. But the funny thing that we're seeing is because of having a pretty good January, February, our fuel sales numbers, which is a big portion of our revenue, are pretty average. And even May tracked fairly close to what we saw in May of last year, which Kelly and I thought was pretty interesting. Our 100 low lead sales are above last year for both March and April. And we think that's because a lot of people had a lot of time on their hands, and a lot of our local folks came out with the flu. We didn't have a lot of visitors during that time, but some of our local folks did come out and take advantage of that. The other thing that we're seeing, our TU fees are tracking pretty good. That's a couple $100,000 a year in the budget. Our tie down parking is down, and I already mentioned rental car concession. The other thing that was a topic of discussion with area managers is property tax and what may happen with property tax. The thought was that no one's expecting it to be as bad as the 2007, 2008 recession, although it could, if economic recovery doesn't happen like some are predicting, it could be. We did see a 6% drop in sales tax or property tax during that 2021, 2020, or back 2012, during that timeline, 2009 to 2012. So we won't know that for a couple of years. I mean, honestly, it'll take a little while to know if we're going to see any dip in our property tax coming in future years. So we'll want to watch that pretty closely as we move through the year. The airport is open for business, still are limited on services that we provide, at least with the terminal and the ramp. Most of the ramp services are up to pre-COVID levels with providing lab service and different things like that. Our meeting rooms obviously are closed. We don't have any meetings going on. Red Truck is going to be opening up here in June without outside seating in our seating area. We're getting that ready. We've had no COVID cases with staff. We're offering, we have lots of PPE. And our safety security managers done a great job of making sure we have plenty of PPE for our employees and their families. We've been providing it for their families too, just so that we can interrupt that chain if we need to have it there, for hand sanitizer, masks, and things like that. Lots of signs, new hand sanitizer stations, twice daily sanitizing of the building. We need to get a little better at that, but we have a policy and are implementing that. We are offering testing, for our employees through our insurance. You can get tested in Kings Beach, and then also we may do antibody testing when that the science around that gets a little better. So that's kind of where our COVID response is. Again, we're optimistic that revenue-wise, we're not going to be as severely impacted as I might have thought a couple of months ago. But really, the big question is looking at that Q2, our second quarter, when we're done with that and we get into the thick of July and August. July and August are slow. Those are big revenue-generating months for the airport, and we'll see how things go.
Can I comment on property tax?
Yeah.
Just because I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
On March 16th, there were 99 active escrows in our MLS, and today there's 243. And they're going over list price to people that are moving here full time.
It's interesting you say that, because Mike Stoudemire said the same thing at North Star, that there's a very active real estate market up there also with people relocating up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there may or may not be a property tax impact. We'll have to see. So any questions on COVID? Kelly, did I accurately depict our kind of what we had talked about? Or anything you wanted to add? There she is. She's working on it.
Hey.
Hi. I've given the review of the finances. Anything that you saw that may be good for the board to know that I did?
No, I would just echo really positive looking at the fuel sales. I looked at them again yesterday, like you and I were talking about, and they're actually trending even better than I thought they were last week. So April was funky, but I think we're catching up in May, and I'm hoping to see that continue.
All right. Okay, that's it for item 2.
I have a question about, because it relates to COVID in terms of the last board's meeting where we set up the 175,000 and how many people, and what's the projection on that?
Sure. Hardy or Kelly, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, we've only had, it's the same people that we talked about last month. There hasn't been any other additions to that list. So,
How many is on the list?
it's 11.
That's
Is that
great.
what you, or no, sorry, 8. That's what we had, right, Hardy?
That's what I remember is 8. Yeah.
And then how much of that money have we used up of the 175? Or, that will be paid back later, but how much then? Just March rent? Just April rent?
Yeah, it's only 1 month so far.
So just 1 month rent?
Oh,
Of
yeah.
about,
We've deferred some rent for these immediate months. Some of those folks have asked for different amounts of rent abatement, and we're going through those right now. But I know we haven't. If I had to guess, and again, we got to get the final numbers. There may be a third of that money that we may have committed to some folks that have asked for it. But people ask for different things. One asked for 12 months of rent deferment, and we said no, we're not doing that. We'll do 3. And so that we're kind of laying that out, and then Hardy last week. He was working on a promissory note with Josh, so that we do a promissory note with each of these folks that we're deferring rent with the stipulations and the payback. But we can get you an exact number as we finish that. Does that sound right?
so about 60,000 has been deferred in rent.
I'd have to look at that. We'll get you that number, but I know we're not close to exceeding it, or I think it's not even half based on what I had thumbed through and was looking at those.
Okay, if you can let us know. Thanks.
Okay, great. Let's jump into district goals. Or
Did you
any
wanna-
public comment? All right, any public comment on COVID-19 impacts, community support, and path forward?
No public comment.
Okay, then we're ready for district goals.
Perfect. So this one was.
Display it?
What was that?
Do you want
we
me
have
to display it or no?
Sure.
Question. Did Rick have a question?
No, I asked it to be deferred from the last meeting, and I thought I would give you my opinion on it.
On the
Or
goal?
I'll just shut up.
Yeah, let me take this item up here for a second. So yeah, this was continued from the last from the February board meeting, where we basically there was board consensus on the first 9 goals that we put forward that staff is actively, but the board decided to talk about the 10th goal and you might need to. Is there one more page of that, Hardy? The 10th goal, which was basically stating, as part of the budget process, develop a method that clarifies revenue and expense line items as they relate to aviation community and the use of property tax. So that one, we have not done anything with that, pending a discussion with the board today, and we're happy to answer any questions or talk about it at any level you'd like.
Okay, you want to go back to the grid?
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. Well, what do you guys think?
I asked
Mary.
it.
Go ahead, Rick.
I asked that it be deferred because I was concerned that this would lead to much more staff to implement it. And if Kelly Wu can tell me that she can implement this goal kind of with the 3 levels of revenue and expense that we see on the financial statement, if she can say she can implement this in some way, shape, or form, that I would be in favor of approving the goals as written.
Kelly?
As we have kind of internally talked about in the last few weeks, it would take a lot of manpower, a lot of time, and definitely splitting our company. If we were to do it right, because that's how I would like to do it, if we were doing it right, it'd have to be 2 separate companies to do it all the way. I don't see the value in doing it just a piece of it. It's not going to tell us anything that we don't already know. And if we're going to kind of go down the road of allocation, it would need to be everything, every invoice, every minute of everyone's time, everything, in order to do it the right way, is my opinion. And that would take a lot of time and energy to make that happen. Different softwares, different ways of aggregating people's time, different tax ID numbers, really, like, truly separate the companies.
What would the 2 companies be?
Well, what we're being asked is to say this is airside revenue, and then here's what we get from property tax money.
And where it's spent, which is really, Mary, where you're going with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to be clear in terms of what is airside generating, what is airside expenses, trying to get some sense of that particular aspect versus, our other business leasing. We have Clear Capital. We have a lot of nonprofits. We support the nonprofits. To me, it's a matter of where is airside at? How much does it lose every year that we need to sell with the property tax, and how much is available for other things, kind of just that type of thinking. If there was no property tax, what would happen? And I am completely for using the property tax to support the airport. I just think we should have a clear idea of what the airside generates in the hangars and the fuel sales and businesses at those and the FBOs that are on site, the SASOs, because we are the FBO. Let it generate, and what is it expense? I think that would be a useful item as a goal. I mean, it might take years to get there. If it is that tremendous amount of work, maybe the goal should be, start on a method, or try to start working towards a method of development. Would be my goal. Because as it's written, it does not seem that it seems like a good goal for any business to know where its revenues and expenses are.
Well, to be fair, we do know where our revenue and expenses come from. And I guess my question, Mary, would be, to what end? Like, what would this do for us that we don't already have?
I think that it makes it clear that watching the budget is a primary goal of what this board does. I support, sustain a happy, productive, and engaged workforce. That's an obvious thing that is a goal of any working entity. So if that level of detail is in the goal, why isn't a working budget defined goal?
We do have a working budget.
And hit a goal to make it clear to how it relates to the property taxes.
But again, to what end? What will we do with that information that we can't do today?
Because it is it's all kind of in one pot. And even back to Bill Quesnel's day, there was this idea that the budget, there's just always this big pot of money, so we never have to really watch what our budget is being spent on. And for me, after, it's like, watch where your money's spent. Watch, that's it. Are we charging true rates and charges? Are we charging correct fees? I mean, those kinds of things. When we're talking about building more entities, more hangars, do they pay for themselves? How is that? And our past hangars are paying for it.
Well,
I
I
see that.
ventured to say that go ahead. Go ahead.
I just think there's the budget. When I talk to various other people, when I go through it, people are confused of who's paying for what. I mean, as an example, we're paying for the tower $2,356 a day to staff the tower. That's coming out of property tax money. And there's people who question that. And
So,
to be clear, that benefits primarily the air side, and should it, but it needs to be help subsidized out of property tax dollars. But if it's all property tax dollars, is that fair?
well, where do you think the property tax dollars should go if not to the airside operations?
Well, I think that there is a broad aspect of do we have concerns on these like next couple issues? Should some of it go towards looking at alternatives for overflights so that the people on the ground who are experiencing overflights, maybe that, we're going to get into it on 1634 later, or the Cigna and the 11, that's going to cost money as well.
So maybe if I just add a little bit to that, I don't actually have a problem with what Mary's talking about of doing those studies. The last one was done in 2009, 2010. They can be a bit controversial because you do have to figure out where different cost centers at the airport, different labor, different things should happen. I do think though, when you get into a study where you're trying to understand how you allocate costs across an organization, and I know the allocation word isn't popular, but that's what we're talking about here. That is what we're saying. There's institutional and internal biases that we all have, and having a third party do that is really the best way to do those kind of things. And how those studies can be beneficial. And again, I'm not necessarily advocating for that study. I'm just saying where there was benefit is if you can come to agreement on how things are allocated, it does help you understand where your revenues and costs are, and are you subsidizing or are you not? But to me, that's really the only way to do it. I don't really see a path internally for us to do it as a staff without jiggering everything we do. And the last thing I'll add is I think our budget is pretty highly detailed and it is transparent. As you look at other budgets, ours matches all GFOA, Government Finance Officers Associations, California Special Districts Association. It meets all those criteria and more. And so I do feel like we have a transparent budget for what we do. If we want to get into that allocation thing, I need to look at an AMCP kind of study like we did back in 2009.
What was your old wording on it, that you had originally developed on this goal?
The original wording?
And
That's the
do you remember?
board book.
Yeah, as part of the annual budget process, develop a method that clarifies revenue and expense line items as they relate to aviation, community, and the use of property tax. All right, well, any other discussion, board members?
I would just like to echo kind of what Kevin just mentioned. I don't have a problem with taking our budget that's super detailed and super well done and allocating it to different categories. I just think we need to do it eyes wide open and understand that that's what we're doing. We're going to allocate X employees' time goes to noise and annoyance, and X employees' time goes to airside maintenance, and some pro rata share of each one of those goes to these different buckets. And how are we going to take Kevin's time? And are you going to fill out time cards, Kevin, and say, this is how much time you spend on all these different things, and we'll take X part of all your employees' salaries and put them in all these different buckets, and then the same with all the expenses. And I think, to echo Teresa's comment, to what end? I mean, Mary, I think what you're after is fair and valuable, in that you're saying this is how much it costs to run this part of what the airport is doing today. But we need to understand that is probably best done by paying someone to help us figure it out. It's going to cost something to pay that person. And it's fair, I think, Teresa, to ask to what end? What are we going to use with the data we get? And is this a good use of our taxpayers' money to go pay these people to figure out what
we're spending money on?
Taxpayers' money.
Well, I don't know.
Where this came to mind was when I thought airside, I thought, okay, we have 14 O&M people, and we know what their salaries and their per contribution and vacation. We know what those expenses are. We know, and then there's 2 definite staff that are pure airside. You know, it's like those are office people that are pure airside. So you got 16 people you know that are specific to air. If you were to just look at those 16 people and say, this is that part of cost, we know on the flip side, we know that there are certain people on staff who are pure community pay, you know, their salary, their associated benefits. And, you know, I kind of just wanted to start with the airside and say, okay, we've got 16 people we know are pure airside. And then there's a lot of people who do both. But if we just look at those 16, what does that cost us? Those are the people who are fueling the planes, who are mowing the grass, who are, you know, jet, you know, tugs and all that kind of stuff. That is it. What does that cost? Not even, you know, and then certain things that we can go through the expense thing and you can say, well, yeah, that's a definite airside. That's a definite aviation side. And you could actually, I don't need to go to the 99th level of an allocation set. I went through that before. But we could get to an 80% level pretty quick off the top. I did it on a, you know, and Kevin would say I have a bias. I'm just saying, what does that number look like? I you know, I don't have access to every scenario payment. I just looked at it and went, oh, salaries and wages are 2.6 million. And I take 14 to 28%, and not the highest paid. So if I take 40% of that, you know, and start running it that way just to see what the airside bucket looks like. That's what I say is a first run at it.
Okay, but just to clarify, because I'm not clear, what are we going to do with this information? Do you think there's something wrong? Something we need to fix?
I think there's some clarity then in terms of when we're getting $7 million in property tax, and how much of that historically or going forward, how much of that, does all of that go to the airport? And should we make hangar rents even less? Or should only a portion of that go? And we know we need some of it over on their side, and I'm all for that. But I also want us to be honest. If I was running a business, I would be very honest in terms of how much money of that comes over to the air side and how much stays on the community. When we're making improvements to the warehouses for nonprofits, that's on the community side. We need to be really clear on that side of the bucket of those expenses as well. I think there's value in that, to being transparent and honest about how these things, and I would start at an 80%, or 70%, you know, to go to a full allocation study. Yeah, it's going to be a long-term contract, and then there's always people saying, well, this and this and this. We went through it before, and I've looked at it again. So that's my thought behind it. And I think as a goal, it's something worth aiming towards, to be out there to the community to say, yes, your property taxes are supporting these nonprofits, but it's not supporting that. Because people are saying, I hear it all the time. I don't know if other people do. When people hear, people have problems feeling like their property taxes are paying for somebody's hangar. They're paying for somebody's fuel. I know that doesn't necessarily happen that way, but that's what's perceived in the community, at least in the community I run in. And by making it a little more transparent this way, that's something we could answer. and say, yes, it's short a certain number of dollars, but obviously that needs to be subsidized. But it's doing these other things, and it's being subsidized over there as well.
Okay, editorially, I think we are transparent and honest with our budget and reporting, and all of that is open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, I don't know, in the 50s, I think we got the FAA charter to have an airport, right? And it was at some point back then that the ad valorem tax was allocated towards airside.
Okay, well, ad valorem tax, we have a write-up from Kirsch that says that it can be used, ad valorem tax, unrestricted revenue. This is from a report he wrote in February of 2018. As a result, so long as the district is meticulous about maintaining an accounting system that segregates district tax revenue, the district has considerable flexibility to use such revenue for purposes that would otherwise be impermissible if it were using airport revenue. That's from an attorney who does only airports. And so that gives us a lot of latitude in terms of how we spend our ad valorem property taxes. And I absolutely agree that part of it should be going, it should be going. But when it's going up from $4 million a year or $2 million a year when I was first running to $4 million in 16, and now it's almost 7, with all the sales that you're noticing going ahead, it's just going to keep going. Well, how do we spend it all on the airport? And so we should be clear in terms of how we're spending it on the airport and as we're spending it for the good of the community. I think it's a goal to work towards. It's not a 1 year, but it's something we should be working towards. And I think that Kelly's already working towards it when I see in the income statement where she's got the 3 categories under the different expenses, where she's already starting to think about it in terms of the airside, the administration, and AVCOM. She's, starting to happen. And so over time, it will become easier. It will become more obvious. And that's kind of maybe the first step. But having it as a goal helps to push it towards that aspect. We're putting it out there. I really like how she set it up with 3 categories. And I think going forward, beginning of what I'm trying to see and where I'm trying to go.
Just throwing it out there, we've always had it in those 3 categories. We've just always been looking at the roll up. On the expense side, you have to break them that way so that everyone can look at their individual expense versus budgets. And I just also wanted to point out too that we all look at these expenses and revenues, and we look at the financials, and we analyze this stuff all the time. So I hope that there's no inference that there's something not right or anything like that, because we do truly look at it all the time. And it's not like, oh, well, are we going to spend up all this money, or are we not doing something right? Because we definitely do look at that stuff all the time, and we're very conscious of what we're spending money on.
I believe you, and I agree that within our world, right, got 12, 15 people here. I'm looking at how it's perceived out in the community, and that's where I see it happen as a goal.
I don't really have any objection, although I don't see that we should spend a lot of money on it, but putting it down as a goal, sure.
May I make a comment or question?
Please.
Getting an outside party to do it is what we do really well. We spend money on consultants a lot. So if we're going to go out and have somebody spend money, how much? What's something like this going to cost? And in the end, some of this stuff is like, for instance, I think I heard Mary say that the tower is primarily airside. Well, when I voted for the tower and for the 365, I thought the tower, and I also think ADSB is good for airside, but is also good for community and positive control of airplanes. So who is going to decide what percentage of the tower and ADSB is going airside versus community? It's a big question.
And then I guess my question to Kelly is, we've been doing this 100, 600, 800 separation all these years, but just rolled up, is what I heard you say.
Mhm.
Correct. Yeah, that's pretty typical. You do a summary roll up for the board presentation.
Well, is that something I can get access to for 19, just for interest's sake?
It's up to you guys.
It's not something.
It's all public information. I mean,
Yeah.
we allocate. I mean, the three codes that we're talking about is our administration department, our AvCom department, which is Hardy's department, and then Dave's department. So we code things there. We always have. But what we're doing now is we're just showing you that detail, that some like that, some may not, because now I got to add these things up and figure out where it's at, where we used to just aggregate it. But that's what we're talking about here.
Well, so how about we leave this as a goal, and we understand that it's, I'm not sure I want to jump into an allocation study. Maybe in 6 months or a year we'll want to go. I'm not wanting to jump into it now or spend money, but I'll be curious when, because in the income statement, you're starting to backfill those numbers, and I would like to see, as those evolve, how it goes. I like it in there, and maybe I'd like to see it for 19, a summary. And I can talk to Kelly, a query of under the expense line for employment expense or equipment rental, where it falls out. Because you could query all 100, query all 600, and you could query 800, and that might be what I need.
It's just quickly, this, as I read the goal again, I could make a strong argument that a lot of this stuff's already in there, and maybe with some enhancements to the narrative that we do every year, which wouldn't be that much work, we can clarify this. One thing I will say is that because they're really maybe board consensus, but I'd like to get some board consensus on it. What I don't want is to have individual board members calling staff trying to figure out, how it's presented. I think that all needs to be done at the board level. That's just something I'd like to see.
Teresa, could I say something? It's Lisa.
Yes, absolutely.
Kevin, I appreciate you taking a hard look at that goal and suggesting that there could be some additional narrative. I didn't quite catch the timing that you were saying, maybe additional narrative quarterly or annually. I think quarterly would be a little bit more helpful than annually, but some additional narrative that could help us understand a little bit more detail what the current splits are telling us. And then I wanted to say, I also appreciate, Mary, that you're willing to explore the idea. We hold on to the goal, but that you look at, you get a certain report or a certain query from Kelly or from Kevin, as is appropriate, and dive into that a little bit and see if that, the combination of the additional narrative that Kevin was talking about, plus you looking at this query or this report, might be a next step that's not super time consuming or super expensive. A set of next steps, 2 next steps.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, we can do that in our quarterlies, and Kelly and I can talk about that. But in the quarterly financial report, we can add, and I can help with that, add a little bit of clarity on these categories, on what we're seeing happen, on a basis. And then in the narrative, where we talk about property tax, we can talk more about it there, and see what happens with that. So diving into allocating all of the different functions that we do, I'm hearing from everyone that that's not the direction we want to head.
Yeah, and I guess And then asking from what Kelly's saying, I mean, I would like to see that query for, say, 2019. And is that a big deal to put that together for all of what 100's expenses for 600 expenses and 800 expenses under the various income statement?
So I'm sorry, you want to see that in the quarterly, or you just want a copy of those?
I was kind of like trying to get a sense of it for last year, just kind of to put my arms around it.
We'll give anyone in the public can call and ask for that, and we can give it to them. And
Okay.
hide those individual department numbers. Again, they interlap. There's lots between departments on air side, land side, community, and all those things.
I would agree that I can give you those numbers and you can look at a P&L for just Department 100, 600, 800, but know that whatever that net number at the bottom doesn't take into effect the fact that, yeah, there is so much crossover between the three. That is just saying, okay, Department 100 bought, I don't know, nuts and bolts. Here they are, because it makes sense for them to be in there. But sure, there are many things that might be in 800 or 600 that do cross over. But the way that we're doing it now, we're just saying this is an expense for our company, for this department. So you have to keep that in mind. Just because there's that number at the bottom of Department 100 doesn't mean that it's not being netted out by the other two.
Particularly for administration and AvCom. O&M is a little more airside centric, but there's still expenses. I would argue, I wouldn't say significant, but measurable, noticeable community expenses on the O&M side too.
So,
Okay.
what do you say of working towards this?
Yeah, what about putting it on the goals?
I would like to see it on the goals. Do I make a motion or to add that line to the goals?
Yeah, we do have this as an action item, so you can take. I think from a staff level, we'd like some clarity on not just consensus, but you want this on there.
Before taking any action, if there's a motion, make sure you get public comment.
I don't have any objection, but I'm not inspired to do it.
I'll second that.
Kevin, do you need to do a roll call vote? How do we do the vote?
Well, we don't have a motion yet.
Why don't,
Oh, sorry,
have
I
a
thought
motion?
you need a motion, Teresa.
why don't we
Sorry.
just ask for public comment in case there is any?
Yeah, any public comment, David?
There is one comment. This comes from Linda Rousson. As a community member, taxpayer, I support seeing income versus expenses delineated as being discussed. I agree with what Mary is describing and appreciate the support note from Jim, Kevin.
Anything else?
That's it.
So I'll make a motion that we add the goal as I guess drafted or worded.
I'll second.
Roll call, alphabetical?
Vice President Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Morrison,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Stevens,
Yes.
Wallace.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Great. Let's see, that was more than 20 minutes. We're behind. Let's see, flight procedure work and ADSB progress, 30 minutes. Mr. Bullock.
Okay, thanks. I know we're busy. I'm going to do my best to get through this information in about 10 minutes, so we'll leave 20 minutes for the board. If you have more time or have more questions, we can move through it. I'm going to share my screen out, and if you want, raise your hand or stop me as needed to ask questions. Can everybody see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So flight procedures, what are we asking of the board and goals for today? We want to review the ADSB and flight procedures timeline. We want to review the flight procedures frequently asked questions and fact sheet that I developed. And we also want to review the 3 steps for flight procedure advancement and development. The technical design portion, public review component, and also the environmental review process. And then we want to review alignment of the 2 priority procedures that ACAT looked at last month at their ACAT meeting. So we'll go over those in detail for you. I have a couple of videos and a couple of pictures of the flight paths that these 2 procedures have over the ground. So here's the timeline. I just wanted to give the board an understanding of how the 3 areas of control, kind of the 3-legged stool that we've talked about, how those timelines overlap. So you have the control tower, ADSB, and flight procedures that work in concert together to bring a certain level of control to airplanes that fly into and out of the airport. They work in concert. Some of them work independently. For example, the tower works independently to some degree, but really we're hoping to implement, as the board's given us direction on that back in 2016 and 2017, to have this 3-legged stool that controls aircraft through that trifecta method of surveillance, control tower, and flight procedures. So the timeline that I highlighted for you is really focused specifically on airspace because that's what we're talking about today. The blue lines are really where the tower, after the tower was approved by the board of directors, we had to construct the tower, get FAA approval, hire the contractor, and get that started. You see the timeline for ADSB is quite a bit shorter. So it took us about 18 months to 2 years to get board approval and funding for that. Once it actually got funded, we went to bid, got the contractor. It's moving relatively swiftly, and we expect construction to start here at the Truckee Tahoe Airport in June and in South Lake Tahoe Airport in June, with flight tracks being developed sometime in midsummer for aircraft flying into and out of the airport. So then you drop down to the airspace timeline. The airspace is a very protracted and long-term initiative and goal for all airports, for the FAA, for the United States as a whole. So the National Airspace System moves pretty slowly. What we've done so far, we did the airspace obstruction survey, which marks all the highest points and things that would be the controlling obstacles for creating different procedures for the airport. We did a lot of airspace outreach. We created an airspace working group, and the airspace working group was comprised of local tenants, commercial operators, Surf Air, Wheels Up, NetJets, National Business Aircraft Association, local tenants, flight instructors. So we all got together in a room and reviewed all the flight procedures. So that happened back in 2018. Some of the recent occurrences in flight procedure, we had a procedure assessment done. There's a technical report on that. We had several FAA meetings talking about Truckee Airport's needs for the flight procedures. And we did a vertical guidance study. And so these are some of the things that are actively going on. The FAA makes routine changes to our procedures. So Jim and other pilots will recognize that the approach from the north just recently got changed a couple of weeks ago, all new points. We worked hard to make sure the alignment worked for our community, and I think we've been successful in that. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that we are doing quite a bit of work on airspace and flight procedures, but it's a long-term process. We added in, Kevin and I wanted to make sure that we talked to the board a little bit about the development timeline and some of the disclaimers that we have based on the airport. We're a general aviation airport. We're subject to the FAA's approval for many of our flight procedures, almost everything we do. So we're making these timelines based on FAA and consultant guidance. So everything that's published on advisory circulars and direction from the FAA, that's what we're using to develop our timeline that we're providing for the board. We may need other airport improvements to make flight procedures viable at our airport. They may be vertical guidance. It could be other things, control technology inside the tower. And some of that may be required once we get in further down the line. Obviously, the FAA has to approve everything we do here from a flight procedure standpoint. We need advocacy with our elected and appointed officials in Washington, D.C., and the state of California, and the capital in Sacramento. So we need help to get that approved. The FAA works well under those circumstances when we have approval from the people that are elected. Again, noise and annoyance is a subjective, it's a subjective piece of what we deal with here at the airport, and we're not totally sure that every single thing we do will reduce annoyance, but by adding those tools to our tool chest and by constantly trying to combat it, creating additional flight procedures, surveillance in the tower, we have a better chance of reducing the total noise impact on our community. So we just want to put it out there that we don't know if any particular flight procedure will actually reduce annoyance, but we think that over the aggregate of trying to get a departure off every runway and an approach for every runway, we can reduce annoyance and disperse some of that. We also understand that every aircraft operator is different. So I'm watching a King Air come in here, a King Air 350. That's a certain type of plane that can use a number of different procedures. The airplane, the Cirrus that I fly, may not be able to use the same procedures, and jets may use a certain other set of procedures. So we understand that all operators are different. We have a diverse fleet mix, and that some of our procedures may not be utilized by all operators. So the implementation timeline that I've drawn out here for you talks about the departure off 29 and 11, and then it talks about arrivals to runway 29 and runway 2. You'll see the timeline for runway 29 and 2 are a little bit more protracted. It's widely accepted by all the consultants in the FAA that runway 29 is a very difficult runway for us to develop flight procedures to. There's a number of controlling obstacles, Martis Peak and others, that prevent us from having easy access to that runway in an aircraft. There's energy management issues, there's terrain and obstacle issues, and there's airspace issues between Reno and South Lake. So that the timeline's a little bit longer on those arrivals. On the departure side, we think we're pretty confident. We've done a lot of notional work to develop the departures for runway 29 and 11 that I'll show you here in a second. So when you're talking about flight procedures, there's always a safety capacity objective. The FAA will not approve a procedure at an airport unless you can prove to them that it enhances your airspace capacity and that you have done all of your due diligence to make sure that that procedure is safe for all of the operators that use your airport. Some of the flight procedures we have require surveillance. Some of them don't. Some of them require a tower. Some of them don't. They all require FAA approval. They will all require environmental approval, and they, in my recommendation, require significant community outreach. We've seen a lot of other airports that improperly manage the perception of flight procedures with disastrous outcomes. And so Phoenix is a good example. Orange County is a good example. San Francisco is a good example of what goes wrong when you don't adequately inform your community about what you're doing with flight procedures at the airport. So where are we today? Currently engaged in the flight procedure work. We have options that I'm going to show you in a minute. ADSB is really integral in this. And frankly, we've focused our attention on getting ADSB approved with the board, approved with the FAA, and installed at the airport. So that's what we've been doing, is really focusing on that initiative. Our fiscal 2020 budget has allocation for flight procedure work. So what we're asking today does not require the board to make any sort of motion using funds we haven't already allocated. So the runway 29 departure is basically a westbound departure. The aircraft would take off to the west, would climb on a runway heading, make a slight left turn, and then go to a pre-existing point called Signet Intersection, which is out by Lake Spalding. The departure off runway 11 would be an eastbound departure, climbing left turn over the backside of Glenshire, with another left turn over Stampede Reservoir or the top of Boca, and then over to Truck Intersection, which is our most common waypoint that we use for the departure phase of flight here at Truckee. Other procedures that we've engaged on are visual procedures, noise abatement procedures, or ad hoc procedures that the airport develops and then publishes. So I'm going to show you this video. I hope it works and we can all see it here. This is the runway 2 and 11 departures. So you're going to see an aircraft departing off runway 2, going over the corner of Boca Reservoir and Stampede Boca Reservoir, and it's going to head up Prosser Reservoir and then make a left turn. You're going to see an aircraft on the runway headed eastbound, make a left turn up over Glenshire. The noise signature, there's a legend in the lower corner that shows you how loud that aircraft is relative to its ground track and its distance above the ground.
And this is a citation.
Yeah, this is a Citation 550, which is our, I think it's our 550, which is our design aircraft based on the master plan.
Which we get a fair amount of, and it and it's a jet.
It is a jet. It's a twin turbojet aircraft. It's a medium-size jet. So that's the departure off runway 11. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. I flew this departure yesterday, both of these, and I have some pictures for you. So this is the departure to Cigna intersection. One departure is off of runway 29, the other one is off of runway 2. Runway 2 is the lower track, runway 29 is the top track. And I'll show you some pictures here. And basically the aircraft's gonna fly westbound, it's gonna fly runway heading, cross the runway, cross the interstate, make a left turn, gentle left turn, it's about 25 degrees to the left, and then straight over to Cigna intersection. One of the challenges with this procedure is that the faster an airplane flies, the wider its radius of turn is. And so that is a function of the speed of the aircraft, not necessarily the type of the aircraft. So if a jet was turning at 180 knots, its turn radius is going to be way up over Tahoe Donner. It's not necessarily going to be the same turn radius as my aircraft. So we have to be aware that while you do design a procedure, the procedure is within a certain containment area and not necessarily a specified ground track. So if everybody understands that, then the track is wide because of that fact that the plane may be within that container. So I just want to point out that you'll see what we already know, which is when a plane is close to the ground and right off the airport environment, you're going to have significant noise and annoyance from the aircraft, from the operation. Basically, it's close to the ground, it's in a high thrust scenario, its nozzles are pointed down to the ground. There's an echoing effect because the aircraft is near the ground and near other buildings and roadways. So you're going to see that red dot is obviously highly concentrated before it gets to Donner Lake. Now I'm just going to pause it right here. One of the biggest benefits from this procedure is that those aircraft are ultimately going to the southwest. Most airplanes that leave here are going to the Bay Area, or they're getting tied into the en-route structure to the southwest of the airport. So by getting those aircraft straight off and getting them tied into the en-route structure sooner, you're reducing track miles, which is reducing the interval and the exposure for our community to that noise. So there's really some benefits to using this procedure to get the airplanes out of our environment faster, because you're reducing the duration, you're not reducing the noise intensity per se, but you're reducing the track miles and reducing the duration, which also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot of win-wins, particularly for these procedures that I'm showing you here as far as reducing track miles and getting the aircraft out of our airspace. When you transition an aircraft out of the airspace quicker, you also build capacity within the system, which allows us to reduce holding and tighten those entrails to get the airplanes down onto the ground faster. These are some visual approaches that they're notional approaches. Can everybody see where my cursor is up here?
Yes.
That is actually completed. So that's the alpha to runway 11. That procedure is actually in use and published today. So I flew this yesterday. And then all these others, we're thinking they're going to be visual RNAV approaches, which means that we need the tower and we need surveillance to put these into play. So those are also notionally designed. That's all I have for the presentation. I did want to point out that if you want additional info, I'd encourage you not to take my word for it, but to seek out other subject matter experts. Many of them are here at the airport. Many of them are pretty outspoken about different procedures here. Lee, Chris Barbera, Tim with ABCX Squared, who's our airspace consultant, and then Cynthia Gibbs is back to work at BridgeNet. She's a longtime consultant for this airport, and she's also the head of the San Francisco Roundtable, one of the most knowledgeable folks in our industry. And then our tower manager, the new tower manager, Larry, Mark Covey, or myself, or Kevin. I put together a technical library, so if you really want to dig into the facts, you can find all your info there. And that's what I have for you.
So Hardy?
Yeah.
If I, real quick, just what we're asking the board to do with this information, goes back to, maybe go back to your first slide, is we wanted to review the flight procedures and the timelines. And we also, you notice we put some disclaimers in there. Those are things we've talked about for years, but we kind of put those all together. But just as Hardy mentioned, we've already had some success with that that approach to 1-1, that when I was in ForeFlight looking there, that it was there, which is awesome. So we've had, we're starting to see a little bit of success. So we wanted to review those in the timeline. We wanted to review the just answer questions. Then the third point there is review the 3 steps where we have technical design, public review, and environmental review, and then review these 2 priority departures, because those departures are kind of the thing that we consider priority and that we've been working on, which is primarily a 1-1 departure. We think the 1-1 departure is really important because right now the tower does not have the ability, because there's only really the Truck 4 departure, and that gets assigned from a computer in Hayward. So the tower, if somebody files an IFR flight plan to depart Truckee, that goes through the tower. The tower doesn't help them find another runway. So if we have another 1-1 departure, as well as some of these others, then we'll have more tools to move jets to various different areas of the district. So kind of what we're saying is we want to start talking about these departures publicly, do some public outreach on them, do some environmental review, and keep moving them forward. And we're interested in the board input on that. Did I capture that correctly, Artie?
Yeah, thanks for the summary, Kevin. I just wanted to point out, these are the pictures, and I'm going to do this in 30 seconds. These are the pictures of the procedures, because I don't want the board or public to think that because we found a new way to get out of the airport without flying over anything, because the airport is surrounded by homes. And so the pictures you see now are going to look much like the pictures you see when you fly over Prosser or fly over Sierra Meadows or fly over Glenshire. I just wanted you to be aware of what you're going to see out the window. So this is the Cigna departure. This is coming off the runway. This is flying the Cigna. This is looking out the left wing. That's rodeo grounds in downtown Truckee. Cigna departure looking toward Donner Lake. Coming up on, that's Coyote Moon Golf Course. Cigna departure again, that's looking at Bennett Flat, Tahoe Donner, Coyote Moon. And then here is the Cigna departure at the top of the ridge, looking over off the right wing toward Tahoe Donner, the top of Tahoe Donner, and then the lower portion of Ski Slope. And then this is actually Cigna intersection. It's a long way from the Truckee Airport. That's Lake Spalding there. So by the time you get to Cigna intersection, if you're in a jet, you're going to be at 18,000 or more at that point. This is interesting. This is a 1-1 departure, and I was flying a Cirrus. It was actually really hot yesterday, so the aircraft wasn't performing real well. But I came off the runway and made a left turn, intercepted the departure, so you can see the quarry off the left front of the aircraft there. This is looking out the right window. So what you're looking at is Juniper Hills and Dry Lake on the right-hand side. And then this is a little bit continuation of that turn. That's Glenshire off the left. That's Boca Reservoir. And the controlling obstruction for this departure procedure is actually Boca Hill, which is in the left upper side of the windscreen there. So the airplane has to fly between Boca Hill and the eastern hills over by Boca. So the airplane has to fit between those two while climbing out. So that's all I just wanted to show you and make sure you saw what I saw as a pilot outside the window with these procedures. We have a lot of momentum built up, and we can keep that momentum going. I think the public outreach portion is going to be significant. And I did assemble a timeline, and I talked to several consultants who can help us accomplish both the public outreach and the environmental review portion. I think the environmental review portion will be pretty simple. It'll be a Cat X, a categorical exclusion, or some other study work that will end in that same conclusion. So I don't think it's a big process on that front.
Teresa, I had just a couple of clarifying questions.
Sure.
So Hardy, you ended those comments talking about the public outreach and the communication, and I am just interested in your thoughts about that. And second, on the environmental compliance, is it only state environmental compliance, CEQA, or do we also need to go through a federal environmental compliance?
There is the federal portion and the NEPA portion as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then I'm sorry, I'm not totally remembering if the timeline that you had addresses any of the public communications, but I think I'm equally interested in just your thoughts on when that could really start, and any preliminary thoughts you have on what it would look like, what the outreach and communications quote unquote activities would be.
Yeah, I did put it in the timeline. I think from our previous experience, from the time that we engage, start publicizing the meetings till the time that they're concluded would be maybe in the 2 to 3 month time frame. And then for us to gather all of the information and aggregate it into a format that's acceptable to the board and really present it would maybe be another month. So 3.5 months or so would be that portion. We still need to understand how much and what involvement the FAA wants in this, and sometimes they can protract that process. But I think we're looking at somewhere in the 3.5 month time frame. And I think my recommendation would be, if you're gonna move forward, I would wait until some of the restrictions got lifted, so we could have semi-public meetings, or some meeting where we could show exhibits in front and put maps up and talk to different neighborhoods. I do think it would be pretty comprehensive though, like we did before, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 neighborhoods around the airport.
Yeah, great, thanks. And then there's some pretty easy to sort out alignment with the public noticing of the CEQA and the NEPA, with you're talking about a much more robust communications process than the regulatory docs require. But yeah, and I really like that idea, and just would maybe ask you to consider the same way that we've done, for example, just as one example with the master plan, there were multiple times and ways that the public could interact. It wasn't just a single 2 or 3 month period. There were several different times.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the success stories many airports have had recently is they essentially develop a website where all the procedures and all the information resides, and so public can kind of hit it. I guess my point is that technology has really allowed airports to reach people on their schedules and their time frame and their location, particularly with the restrictions we have now. But agreed. And I do think we would try and engage a consultant for both portions, on the public outreach side and also on the environmental review side, because like you said, the timelines with the environmental review are pretty stringent and pretty structured, and so we would want some help walking through those.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions for Hardy?
Appreciate it. I was curious on that first map where you show, where you go back to the very first one where you show where truck is. And I'm wondering what those other waypoints were. I couldn't see that. I can see where truck is, and I know very well where truck 4 is, where truck is. But if you could go back for a minute, where you're showing how it's trying to get, particularly 1 and 2.9.
This map, Mary?
Coming. No, go back to the very first part of your PowerPoint. That first one.
That one?
Not take it back. Down one. Where's the one?
Oh.
That. Yeah, down here at the bottom, in the black part. So truck is where they're going now. We point at truck. That's not truck. This is truck farther down in the blue. So it's this
I don't know
is
if I have the
truck.
right diagram for you.
Well, it's showing that they're going to a 1, 2, 3, 4 waypoints, and Bullock is where they're joining out with the 2 red lines, correct? That's
They were
Bullock.
going north to truck on that. And I just kind of put that in there as a, let me see if I can make it bigger for you.
Yeah, because that's Bullock. See,
Yes.
that's where I'm at, is where truck is, where
Yeah.
aircraft going now. I mean, you can show them going off 29 with your pointer.
Right here.
You know, they're coming off going, no, but they're not doing that. They're going off to truck. So they're going,
Truck is kind of up here where my cursor is a little bit.
okay. I'll bring out that other map later. Okay, thanks.
Okay, you got it.
Because I'm
These
thinking
steps-
that's truck,
are these-
because it's showing Bullock is where they're going to. And so it's notional.
Yeah. Right, it's notional, and truck intersection is north of that. So we just wanted to get a temperature of the board. Do you want us to start the public outreach process? Are these alignments something the board is interested in doing? Are we ready to reach out to the public and show some of these tracks over the ground and some of the pictures and do some public outreach on it? And is that something we think we want to start moving forward with right now?
I'm in favor of moving ahead with it to, you know, I mean, you have the VFR, IFR, you know, in bad weather, you can't use certain I understand all that, but I think that the idea between the 3-legged stool of the tower and the ADSB and the charted procedures was that we would distribute aircraft, you know, since we all accrue the benefits of having people fly in here, we also should accrue the costs. And so I'm in favor of getting started, because as we'll get into the next part of the report, the jets are significantly impacting all the neighborhoods to the north. And they have to, as Kevin said, if they're assigned an IFR, they have to. And it's as I said, I've lived in the neighborhood 29 and a half years, and it's definitely changed. And yeah, so I think I would like to see it started.
It seems to me to be a good idea to get started, but I'd like to hear from Jim as the only pilot on the board, if this is a good thing, the way we want to go, the best way to go.
I think it's a good thing in general. Yeah, I mean, I think Hardy's done a great job of explaining how the process works and what it is and what we're up against. And I'm a little bit at a loss as to what's the debate about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
sooner
don't.
we can get it out, the better.
I agree completely. We've been on this strategy for years and years, and it's been too soon many other times along the way to start talking to the public. There's been too many qualifiers and potential restrictions or exit ramps from the FAA. And if the staff is really feeling confident and ready now with the FAA, the tools and the consultants, it would be exciting to get going and talk to people and get some feedback from the public, pilots and non-pilots.
This is the third and final piece. So the first two were what we were engaged on financially. Whole sphere, everything was engaged on the first two, tower, ADSB, and then now the final is the flight procedures. So thanks for the insight, and we'll certainly keep the board up to speed on what progress, and we'll launch and try and get a plan together and present it in a way that makes sense and get it checked through the board before we take off on that. And Kevin will engineer all that.
Well, and I think Lisa actually summed it up pretty well. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time, but we're now to the point where there's light at the end of the tunnel. We think it is time to talk to the public about these. Say, hey, we're going to launch forward with these. Just as Hardy had mentioned, the new arrival that was published, that's kind of part of this effort that actually got charted. And so, it's time to start doing that. We wanted to make sure the board knew where we were heading. We'll get a communications plan together and then kind of let you know when this is all going to happen. I agree with Hardy that we have to be able to do this in person. Having community Zoom meetings to talk about flight procedures is not an effective practice. So we'll figure that out and get rolling on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any questions, comments?
Rick says yes.
All right.
Okay.
Any public comment?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say before Brent said it. Public comment?
No, the only comment I got during that was that the live feed has been cut now.
Oh,
Well, do you need anything else from us, Kevin, Hardy?
I think that for that item, we're in good shape.
Great. Okay, then we are on to runway use tool development project.
Yes. So I'll just give you a little background on this project. This continues. We have this working group. It's kind of an interesting this format before, but it essentially involves the chair of our ACAT, Director Heatherton is on that working group, and then it's myself, Hardy, and David Van Quest, and we're trying to work with Vector to develop this runway reporting tool. So we are in the process of trying to figure out, we have preliminary data that we received and some heat maps. What we're trying to do is take that data and isolate it so that we can do it by runway. And the other thing that we have to know is wind data, because right now all we have is all the airplanes and the areas they flew over and what the heat maps look like. But we really want to know during calm wind conditions, what was utilization when pilots had the opportunity to select different runways, and what was the utilization at that point. And so we want to work with them for about another month and a half and come back hopefully in July and be able to show you what this reporting tool can do, and it's the tool that we'll use biannually to kind of show at the end of each season of the winter season, summer season, to be able to show the board and learn what runway behavior has been like. And so as you can see, some of the preliminary data showed some increases. Obviously, we had a 30% increase in traffic, or 29% between the two reporting periods. There was some additional utilization, 9 and other runways, and so we're in the process of trying to dissect that. We still have some budget, about $9 of the budget that was approved that we haven't used yet, that we're working with the vendor on. But we wanted to give you an update on that. I did, and kind of what the working group has been doing. And there's also a couple things we included was some information from our tower, just on runway selection, and then also a handout you've seen before on determining factors of aircraft utilization. Last thing I'll say is Teresa and I talked a little bit about this item before. We could have done a presentation on the data that we already have, but we'll do this again in July. And so the idea was, let's not do it twice. We'll have better data in July, but happy to answer any questions, make any comments or anything on how that project is rolling along.
so I'm being the one board member on the working group. I want to clarify a few points here in that when we're doing the analysis, we were focusing on the summer period, June 15th to September 15th, because that's when we have the most operations and the most comments. So when we talk about since 2005, over the last 15 years, operations have tripled over that summer period. No, that's annual. That is annual, isn't it? And that powered aircraft, that when the statement about annual growth has slowed over the past 3 years, that's if you include gliders. If you only talk about powered aircraft, then in fact it is increasing, because I have those numbers too and have crunched them a couple times. So that clarity. I also, in terms of that this is the point of averaging, how we don't hit 65 decibels with noise, and we don't need snow removal because we only get 2 inches a day if you average it out over a year. So when these things up to the tune of 66% for departures and 7% for arrivals, we actually got the data from the people there. And when you crunch those numbers, I'm going to actually read it to you. Just on runway 29, which is departing out over the north part of Truckee to Truck, jet arrivals have increased 14.4% between the averaging years of 15-16 and 18-19. These are just the facts. Jet arrivals increased 14.4%, jet departures increased by 10.7%. Turboprop arrivals increased by 12.4% and departures increased by 10%. Twin piston arrivals increased 18.1% and departures by 16.4%. Single engine piston arrivals increased 5.6% and departures increased by 2.8%. And if it's valuable to compare these percentage changes to the usage of all other runways, jet operations decreased by 5% when you add up the 3 other runways. Turboprop operations increased by 4.6%. Twin piston operations decreased by 6%. And single piston operations actually increased on the other runways by 2.5%. So there is a change. It could be because of, and that's one of the reasons we want wind. And we want to know who's flying IFR, because now I understand and was not aware up to this point. If you fly IFR, you have to go to truck. And there also is an aspect of flow that Hardy has talked about, where once they start working all the aircraft in one direction, they continue that. So just for fun, I'm bringing this map up, and hopefully I can bring it up with our lovely, there. That is what's happening. They made a heat map. They made a whole bunch of these, but you can see that red line is going north out over, Martyrs Valley Estates and Olympic Heights and Coachland Middle School, Prosser Heights, Hennis Flat, and the new Frischman Hollow, of which they're going to build 68 more homes. So I asked Kevin maybe to have this something they could bring up. Just jet departures. And my point being, I want us to start sort of thinking about aircraft, thinking about the different classes of aircraft. Because like if 1-1 works, it works for jets. It might, and pistons it could work because they could jump. And King Air, there's concern by some people that, if I lose an engine, it's not good. My whole point is no one neighborhood or one section of town should bear all costs, all the traffic. And for whatever reasons, the facts are that is what's happening. And I think with this additional work, we can run studies, and if anybody's curious, David Van Quest has the Excel spreadsheet that shows all the data we're trying to collect and then query it to come up with these type of maps. Is everybody able to see this, or were you able, Kevin, to?
Well, if the board wanted us to dive into those, we can. I mean, we have that data, but from the
I don't want to dive into all of them. I'm just trying to show what is currently happening.
We can't really see it.
Yeah, it's hard because of the kind of see that. We could put that up if we want to get into that. At least from the working group, it's not done, incomplete, but that data, it does show, the departures from 2015 to 2019 with the increase in operations that we've had. It shows impact on all neighborhoods on that Truck 4 departure, which is one of the reasons we're excited about getting going on this 1-1 departure, because we think that could be a way to alleviate a lot of that, or at least some of it.
And I understand there's no silver bullet. There's no one departure that's going to work in all conditions for all aircraft. But what I'm looking at is how do we expand our tool chest, as Hardy phrased it, to share it, to distribute it, not to funnel it, because that's essentially what's happening, particularly with the jet traffic.
Well, perhaps we should wait till we get more information. When did you say, Kevin? July?
Oh, we're going to meet, and we think that Vector, we're going to meet with Tom Breen hopefully next week, and he indicated that he needed about 6 weeks to get that work done. And so July at the latest would be August, but we should have those all done and complete, and we can show you kind of what we're seeing. I'm optimistic and hopeful that what I like about this is I hope it's a tool that, because right now it's a very, very small sample. It's a couple of years that we're looking at. But from what I see, being at the airport every day and being in my truck and watching runway selection utilization, what the tower's doing, they're getting better and better at moving airplanes to calm wind runways during calm wind conditions. And so getting this tool developed the right way so that it tells us to answer the question that was originally posed, and then moving forward, I'm really excited about, what I think it can do. So it's just getting it finished with the data that we need.
Awesome.
And this is not done. I mean, no other airport, and that's why we're working with Vector to create it. Nobody gets this granular level of detail, which is fine. There's not an issue with that, but we just need a little more time to finish it.
Okay, so we'll just hold this one over until July or August. Any other questions, thoughts, public comment?
I'll just make a comment about the 1-1 departure. I think it sounds like it could make a real difference. Though, Hardy, you mentioned we're surrounded by houses. There could potentially be some departures off that runway that would annoy less people. And Mary, I'd like to ask you, are you okay with dispersing the traffic? Because it seems like that's been a hard question over the years.
Are you asking if I'm for dispersing the traffic?
I think so, yes.
Well, that's always been, yeah. I do think it makes sense to disperse. Or if as a board, I would never for finalizing the traffic as a policy.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're getting that weird playback loop again. If somebody could work your magic again and get rid of that.
Magic. Yeah, I'm thinking that dispersion is where we should be heading rather than concentrating it over specific neighborhoods to them, well, you bear the cost. That doesn't seem fair or right or appropriate.
Okay, well, I think that the 1-1 departure could be really beneficial to a bunch of active users that are down at that end of the airport. I think that you all need to understand that the prevailing winds don't support 1-1, so it'll only work in kind of unique, often calm runway conditions, which are a lot of mornings and a lot of times when 1-1 does work. And what else can we do besides do our best to try to come up with more options and see how those work? And they're not always going to work, and they're always going to be.
I said that. I agree completely. There's no one magic fix because we are surrounded as the airport.
I would go ahead, Mary. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's so it's just to share that with everybody, so it seems that we all share in the benefit and the cost instead of just telling the certain neighborhoods or primary homeowners, too bad. That doesn't seem like we really say that.
I wanted to mention, if anybody has the inclination, it was really great to fly it again, and I would recommend come jump in the plane with myself or Jim or anybody, and we can get you up there flying these, because it's a very unique perspective to look out the wing and look down at the community, and we can fly what's existing and we can fly what's proposed, and it'll give you a real spatial orientation of where we are with the airport and these procedures. So I would just encourage everybody to take the time to reach out. I'm happy to take you flying or get you aligned with somebody that you want to go flying with and look at it that way as well.
Which, when we're not COVID, I'd be very much interested.
And then
I love small planes. I think it's a hoot, so I'm right there. Not you, Teresa. I know not going to go up in this little.
Yeah, not unless I'm medicated.
I think,
All right. So we don't have an action item here, right? And we already asked for public comment. So let's just dovetail into alternate runway preliminary analysis report.
All right, let me talk about this real quick. So, if you remember, back a few months, we asked Mead and Hunt to give us an alternate runway plan out to look at the alternate runway that we considered back in 2013 as part of the master plan. So before you, we sent you the report that basically describes much of the same things that we found back in 2014 when this was looked at before, and essentially was why it was originally dismissed back then. And part of our goal with this analysis was to see if anything changed, to talk to the FAA design folks, or the consultants that work with those people, to kind of see if anything has changed. And essentially they're telling us not much has changed. There are options for us to do it, but we don't necessarily see a path for any federal funding at all. And there are some geometry issues no matter where it is. And there's one comment that maybe we could shift the runway farther to the east towards the mountain, but it's still not going to change these approach and departure corridors and some of the geometry issues that essentially needing to make modification to the existing two runways. And so we bear the cost of construction. There'd also be some cost associated with reimbursing FAA for any loss in use of the existing runways. We tried to schedule some time to meet with the airport district office in San Francisco. They would not meet with us on it unless it was included as part of a master plan. And so that's essentially what Mead and Hunt recommends at the end, that if we're interested in looking at this at a much higher level, that the best time to do that is when we do a full airport map, or we do our master plan, or redo our master plan, which we'll actually start that in about 3.5, 4 years. We'll be updating the master plan. So happy to answer any questions on it or take that you have on this particular report.
well, Jim, you and I were on this master plan ad hoc committee way back when. And as I recall, we decided to shove it because of cost. And we really didn't go any farther than that. Do you remember it differently than I?
I mean, I just remember that we looked at it and it was prohibitively expensive due to cost, and we didn't feel, or I'll change that and say I didn't feel like we were going to see much benefit from an extreme amount of cost. So it just seemed like a non-starter to me.
Yeah, we looked, extending 220, but we could only really get it to 5,000 feet. And so, this one being 6,300 and moving it 500 feet, 1,000 feet to the east is an option. And I, to me, this is like another option because I don't really see aircraft coming in on 3-4. I see aircraft more likely coming in from truck on 1-6 and then departing off 3-4. And I just would like to not completely shelve this. I'd like to see what effect 1-1 had and, departing off 1-1 and or the Cigna I don't want to throw out this baby with the bathwater. I think there's possibility in it. It gives more options to pilots in certain wind conditions. I think that it also would pull, if people go straight out, they would be over Prosper Dam heading straight to truck or coming straight in from truck, and there's very little development underneath that approach or departure. So I kind of would like to keep this kind of live in the background.
I don't know what that looks like. What does that mean? How do we do that?
Well, it just means that we keep it in. Part of it is that, I have a resolution that dates back to 2004 that says when proportion of jets exceed 15%, the total count, the airport district shall initiate the airport master planning process. And we're definitely above 15% and have been for a few years. And this was a resolution before I was even elected. And I'm wondering, do we start master plan process again to try and think about getting it on the ALP?
With the end result being building this runway.
Possibly.
So do we have any action item on this, Kevin?
I'd just like to make a couple comments. From a pilot's perspective, Mary, I think that it would work to have a long runway that you could take off on without wind or weather. But whenever there's any wind, and we could do a simple study to figure this out, the wind almost never blows to favor either of those runways. Typically when you're landing on 2-0, there's a southwesterly crosswind, or when you're landing on 2-9, there's a southwesterly crosswind. I mean, occasionally we have wind come in from the north. It doesn't usually come in from the northwest, and it almost never comes in from the southeast. So it seems like to spend $25 million on a runway that can't get used when there's bad weather, the FAA would say, no, we're not going to support that. And I think that's what Kevin's telling us. And so I'm happy to keep talking about it, but I'd like to do the research to say either we looked at it and here's how we looked into it and it's not going to work, and use that as a benefit to the community and them understanding that we're seriously considering it and we've looked at it, or prove us wrong and say, here's how it can work. But I guess we just should start with the eyes wide open that we're probably not going to get any funding because it doesn't work very well. And if FAA won't fund it and it doesn't work very well, how are we going to pay for it, and how's it going to work if it doesn't work?
I guess I'm looking at the funding that we get every year, and this could be 5 years away, and we could develop a war test for it, and we could bond for it and build it. And if we are trying to do something and, one and, these other departures can't happen, then it's another arrow in the quiver, potentially, of distributing aircraft overflights over some places that there's little to none development.
I'm going to go with Jim on that and say, if the pilot tells me that it's not going to get much utilization, it doesn't seem like the best use of our money. Just saying, we can go through the process, but
there's no real action on it. It's kind of like, it's the way that it's written. It's like, and as I'm recalling with Jim, it was like, oh, that's too expensive, or, we really can't go there. I'm just saying, keep this in a back pocket. If it happened, we're not taking direct action on it, but don't throw out this baby with the bathwater, because it could solve a lot of the overflight issues if, in fact, the wind, which is part of that other study, if it proves it out in certain conditions and certain times of the day, it might do something. That's all I'm asking, is don't throw it out. Don't say absolutely not.
okay. Any other board comments?
Yes, we haven't discussed the other option of extending 220, which is in the airport master plan, and extending it would cost $10 million, and the FAA would approve, would pay for 90% of that. They wouldn't pay for the taxiway, but I think that when we're looking at this, we got to look at both options.
Yeah, just quick follow up with that, Rick. The FAA will fund 90% of the reconstruction of both Gulf and 220, which we're scheduled in 2024, 2025, right in that timeline is what they're telling us. If we have the option per our current ALP port layout plan to widen it another 25 feet, 50, so 100 feet wide, same as our main runway, and then we have the option to extend it. They won't pay for the widening or the extension, but we can include those at the same time at a fairly probably cost-effective price, because they'll already be, all the mobilization and everything on the other project will already be there. So that's definitely something we can look at as we approach this reconstruction of 220. And as we mentioned, that is on the ALP. And then maybe what Mary was saying is, when we redo the master plan in 2025, all these ideas could be discussed. I mean, you can bring up anything you want at that time. So I don't know that we would ever remove something or put something on, at this point. All this paper was trying to do is give you, and I think it's very accurate, even though it doesn't paint a very easy path to do it, but it's accurate. I mean, it follows every, it paints a good picture of what the federal process is to get approval for a runway like that. We should just be realistic about that. So, which I think we all are. So.
And so when is 220 scheduled in the pavement management plan, the 24 and 25?
Yeah, 24 and 2025. And that's a $10 million project to reconstruct Gulf and 220. And so far they're telling schedule for that.
So it's possible we would have a 1-1 departure and maybe a Cigna departure developed by then. And
yes.
Hopefully, and then we'll see if that helps to distribute some of the jet departures, and if we can train, and work the different approaches and departures.
Yeah, with the 5 runway and 100 feet wide, we may get some more utilization of that runway.
Okay.
What do you think of that, Jim? Extending 2-0?
I think I'm totally on the fence. I think it's a great idea. I just think that over the years, we are really uncertain as to how much of a difference it'll make.
Yeah.
And I think it's an expensive idea.
Well, how much would
it'll make an incremental difference?
I would guess we'd be $4 to $5 billion into the widening and lengthening of our own money. Maybe a little bit less if we can combine it with a bigger project, but I can have Brandley do a quick look at that. I'm going to have to do that anyways.
Okay. Anything else, Rick?
No.
Lisa?
Nope, nothing additional. Thank you.
You good, Jim?
I'm great.
And Mary?
Nope.
Okay, any public comment?
Yeah, we got one. It's a long one here. It came in by email. This is from Greg Scalappi. He says, TTA board. I have read the full proposal and data relating to the construction of a new runway 34/16. It is my understanding that the main purpose for constructing this runway is for calm wind noise mitigation. As a local pilot and resident, I would like to offer my thoughts and opinion about this proposal. It is my feeling that this is an unnecessary and extremely costly approach to noise mitigation, circa $28 to $30 million expense unsubsidized. Current runway 220, should it be extended to a similar distance at roughly a third of the cost, subsidized by the FAA based upon inclusion in the master plan and wind qualifying data, can serve the same purpose with the incorporation of a left 20 to 40 degree noise abatement procedure. This would mean minimal disruption to the existing airport environment and current procedures for VFR and IFR approaches and departures operations. These comments are only in the context of calm wind noise abatement departure operations only. There are many other reasons 1634 at its proposed length would not work for heavy jets in a high and hot environment and create a dangerous visual approach pattern, be it left or right traffic for 34 due to terrain. It is also my opinion that there are other measures that can be taken to reduce noise off of 29 that have not been implemented. These include restricting certain types of aircraft at noise-sensitive times, more community outreach, and pilot incentives beyond hangar accounts to fly quiet. Thank you for hearing my opinion.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
just as, yeah, I mean, the extending 220, the idea was, I mean, the best you could get is 5,055 feet, unless you're going to dump a lot of fill off the end of the runway. So the difference of 1634 was potentially 6,300 feet. It's a big difference.
Okay, we'll keep it in the mix. We're not throwing it out with the bathwater.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, then I think we're done with this and we can go to potential land donations and acquisitions.
Zipping through these items. Yeah, so the first one, I was not hold of Art Chapman, but that one may not be an option, or may not be. Well, let me back up. So there are two land acquisitions and donations, and again, when I say donation, I'm talking about people donating land to us. We don't donate property as a FAA titled airport. But these two that came up was one, the parcel, and maybe Hardy, can you put up the first map? It's the Soaring Ranch to TTAD donation. I'll show you this real quick, but I don't think this one's an option anymore. So you can see the little map that I made, and it's got that 8.7 acres. Originally, it said that the town didn't have interest in having property donated to them by the Soaring Ranch. Like maybe that's changed. I'll confirm that, but I think right now we don't need to worry too much about that. I felt like it would be better if that was public ownership than to stay in a private ownership if there was no other public agency that wanted it, and so I raised that issue. But I'll defer that to a later date. With the town. Any questions on that one from the other one?
No.
Okay.
So
Well, Mary has a question.
Yeah, are we being asked about? I mean, is it something they're asking us to take, or is it off the table or on the table?
Well, it sounds like, and Rick was able to tune into a meeting, but it sounded like the town of Truckee was going to go ahead and take that land donation.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, the town council was working on financing, and Soaring Ranch committed to give them not only that parcel, but the one on the other side of 267.
Great.
Yeah, I think the town ownership is much better than us owning it. That's where it should be. So hopefully that'll move forward. The second one is a little more interesting, and this is very cursory, very just conceptual, but I wanted to get it out there. The land trust had approached us, and if you look at this map, you'll see that little red kind of funny shape there, like the head of a chicken a little bit when you zoom in. Hardy, can you put the mouse on that? Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Kind of over right on the Truckee River there. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So that parcel, there's a sign on it right now that says "Coming soon, nothing." So the land is looking at acquiring that, and had talked to the airport district, approached myself about our interest in participating with them to acquire. Then the airport land use zone D. It may have some residential potential, which is what we'd like to not have as much of that in that D zone. It's got significant development constraints, but other stranger things have happened. But just putting a question out to the board, if you'd like more information on this, or if you'd like the land trust to come and talk to you about it, and this fit with our open space strategy. So.
I'll jump in and say I'm interested in it, but I obviously have to know more about what the potential of it is development wise, and what the constraints are, and whether it makes sense.
I met with Perry Norris, and the original, or the owner, had a development map on it where you extend East River Road into the property and have lots of lots. And it is in the D zone, and he is raising money to buy it. He's under contract, and they want to put a bridge across the river so that you can access it from, I guess it's West River Road. The way you get to it right now is you turn where the Argonaut Hotel may or may not go and go down that a ways.
I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to say I would encourage the land trust to give us more information, and so we can consider it.
Yeah, just a third voice echoing Jim and Rick.
Good.
I'm the fourth voice echoing as well.
Yeah, unless more information, it's hard to know.
Okay. Well, that was really my question. Is if they want more information, before I invite them into a meeting to make an agenda item and have them present it, I just wanted to run it by the board first. So that's really all I did on that one.
Great. I think we're done. Oh, we need public comment. I see Brent leaning in. David,
no
any
public comment?
None.
Negative.
Okay,
You
any
got
board
an
member
hour.
announcements? Not at this time. All right, well then let's adjourn. You guys have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. President or Vice President Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Morrison,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Wallace.
I couldn't get off mute. Sorry. Yes.
All right. Don't forget, you got 4:30.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got an hour.
60 minutes. Bio break.
Get something to eat.
See you guys
All right.
soon.